Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Perpetual Perspectives, powered by Vest Exchange, where we believe traders deserve markets built to protect them. So, Vest is here because exchanges today often leave traders exposed to manipulation, unfair liquidations, and unpredictable liquidity. At Vest, we're fixing that by replacing opaque market makers with a decentralized risk engine, which transparently prices liquidity in real time. So, what this basically means is that there's deeper liquidity, reliable execution, even when markets get volatile, fewer unexpected liquidations, and most importantly, a fair exchange that never trades against you. By the way, we just launched our points program where you can earn rewards by trying out Vest. Check it out today at vest.exchange. I'd love to get your feedback on the exchange. Feel free to DM me. It's a different question whether I'll get to it. I'm terrible at checking DMs, but yeah, go ahead and shoot me a message. So today I have the honor and pleasure of having with me the chief neck officer himself, Mayne, at Trader Mayne, as you know him on Twitter. He's been in the game since 2013. Trades pure price action from what I've seen, and we can get into that with him. And he's traded crypto, stocks, options, futures, forex, commodities, basically everything under the sun. From what I understand, his main focus currently is crypto, forex, and he also indulges in the options market from time to time. Also, the founder of Breakout Prop. Without further delay, let's get right into it. Thanks for taking the time out, Mayne. How's it going? And also, is there anything that I missed that you'd like to fill in the gaps for in terms of that brief introduction?
No, thanks so much for having me, bro. No, I think that's pretty fair. I've traded kind of, the full gambit of markets over the last decade almost, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, now kind of continuing to trade and work with my community and, create videos and whatnot. But a lot of my focus has been breakup prop of late. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride, man.
Awesome. Let's we'll get into it a little bit. One question that I like to ask pretty much everyone is, what's the story behind your account name on Twitter? Like, why did you choose Trader Mayne? Was there a thought process behind that, or was that just like an afterthought kind of thing?
I'm sure people have some pretty cool stories or reasons for their username. I was 23 when I made my Twitter account, which was, pretty young in my opinion. And I really liked the rapper Gucci Mane.
That's
Originally, I
so
was actually Crypto Mane.
okay.
But then I decided, well, I don't want to pigeonhole myself to just crypto. Like, what if I'm going to trade other stuff? So I expanded my reach by rebranding to Trader Mayne. And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm going to keep it. I tried to buy the handle just purely Maine off of
Yeah.
someone, but it's like some middle-aged woman in like America, and she won't sell it to me. So I'm stuck with Trader Mayne.
All right. So there's a series of interviews that were done in 2022 around that time frame by someone. To anyone listening in, by illustrate.alpha. I think that's his tag on Twitter. But it's written. It's like these written interviews. And you did one back in, I think it was like May of 2022. You talked about loading up a futures account and trading E-mini futures on S&P 500, and you blew up like a 20K account in a single day. So first off, what was the trajectory in terms of you getting into trading? And then from there, once you blew up that account, how did you move from that? Like, how did you overcome that in terms of like, hey, look, well, fuck this. Like, this is too difficult. I blew all this money. So like, let me just do something else versus then going into trading crypto. What was your introduction like when it comes to that?
Sure. I mean, I got introduced to crypto first through a friend of mine. Told me this was the future of money. I thought he was crazy, but then it went up a lot. So I'm like, oh, maybe, I can get rich, basically. I think that's everyone's first thought when they get into the markets. It's like, I can get rich. So I bought a bunch of crypto. Like I had a ton of Bitcoin, like a ton back in the day because it was so cheap. And then I used it to buy altcoins and whatnot. And I kind of experienced the tail end of the bull run in 2013, 2014. And then everything went down. And I lost like so much money at the time for me. And then obviously now those Bitcoins would be worth exponentially more, but we don't talk about that. And the fact that it went down, I kind of stepped away from the markets for a little bit, but then I kind of got sucked back in being like, okay, well, how does this work? And that led me down the rabbit hole of trying to learn how to analyze the markets. And I, found Forex and futures and options, and not too dissimilar to now. There's people telling you, hey, my strategy is going to teach you how to make money from, your underpants at home. And I just kind of got stuck into that. And I had gotten to a point where, I was paying for mentorships and signals groups, and I was in one group with a guy, and he was, telling me that futures are where it's at. You don't need to be trading crypto. Like, you need to be trading the E-mini futures. You need to be trading futures on like the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. And I had no business doing that. I was in no financially. I clearly didn't know enough about what I was doing in the markets or risk management. And blew up an account, and that was shitty to say the least, because it was a lot of money. But I was very fortunate in that failure always was like, it made me more motivated. And I guess I'm lucky in that way. I think it can be a deterrent for a lot of people. You lose money, you do something incorrectly, and you're like, well, screw this. I don't want to ever do it again. Whereas for me, I always viewed it as like, hey, but people are making money. Like, someone is on the other side of this trade getting it right. And that's just kind of what kept me coming back. And then consequently, as I was continuing to learn, crypto started heating up again. And I was like, I wonder if all this stuff I'm learning in FX and futures translates to crypto. And it did.
That's interesting. When you first started off, was this like, were you all in on this, or were you working, or was there like a fallback plan for you at all? Or were you like, this is it, I need to make this work?
Like, when I first made a little bit of money, I quit my job immediately, because you do the like extrapolation math. It's like, well, if I made $1,000 today, all I got to do is make $1,000 every day, and I'm making $365,000 a year. Like, why do I need my regular job when I'm going to make six figures a year? Because I made $1,000 today. That means I can do it. And I learned very quickly that that's just not how it works. So I quit my job very briefly. Then I started losing a ton of money, and I started chasing. Like, I started trading to pay bills as opposed to trading to grow my account. So I moved into my dad's basement. I got a job again. And trading just became something I was doing kind of on the side. I would come home from work, I'd open up the charts. At lunch break, I'm looking at the charts. In the morning, I was looking at the charts. So the fallback plan, I don't know if I had necessarily a fallback plan. Like, I wanted it to work, but I worked while I was doing it. I did not stop working and trading full time until 2020.
So this is an interesting conversation, because I'm sure you've gotten a lot of DMs. I get these DMs as well. Hey, like, I'm going to go full time and trade, and I'm going to pay my bills using this money. In your mind, like, what's the psychological difference between trading, to grow your port versus using it to pay your bills? Like, what's the right time to, I mean, it's obviously an individual to individual basis, and in terms of how much risk you're looking to take on and where you're at in your life. But what would your advice be to someone? Because I get these DMs a lot. Like, hey, I'm gonna, I have whatever 6 figures now, and I'm gonna just do this full time.
Yeah, I mean, I would preface this with saying I don't think the majority of people have any business trying to trade full time at all. Nor do I think it's necessary, especially with an industry like crypto. Like, crypto is really hot a few times a year. Like, there's a few times a year where the market is unbelievably volatile, whether it be up or down. But then there's large periods of time where the volatility is extremely low and there's not a lot of opportunity. I think DGen Spartan had the quote where it's like, there's 5 times a year where you pick up money off the floor and that's it. And so you don't need to pay attention to crypto full time, in my opinion. Now, if you're like, I'm in the trenches and if I'm not locked in, I'm not going to make money. But we all just learned that all those people who are locked in were locked into inside information, apparently. So it wasn't that they were online all day. It was that they were, they had asymmetric information to some others. But regardless, I don't think most people need to trade full time. I think people have this concept like, I need to trade every day. The best traders I know don't take that many trades. Even people who are scalping, right? Like, they're taking a trade at the New York Open. And if that trade's not there, they're not trading for the day. So the idea that you need to switch full time right away, I think is silly. But if you're keen on it, because I get it, and some of you want to, I do believe that having a significant nest egg in terms of like my bills are paid for a minimum of 6 months to a year, where it's like I could make $0 this year and I'm good. My quality of life has not changed one iota. I think that's a good place to start. And then obviously you have to have an account that is meaningful in size, because to your point about psychology and trading for bills, 6 figures sounds like a lot of money, but what is your realistic return on that every single month? Like, are you going to be able to get 10% on that every month? If you can every single month, give me a call. I'll get you a job at a hedge fund. Realistically, you're not going to make 10% every single month. You might make 10% one month. You might make 20% one month, but you have to figure out, okay, how much money do I need to live? And can I consistently pull that out of the market without, taking down my initial account balance? And I think that number is a lot bigger than people think. And it requires an unbelievable level of consistency that I don't think most people have. I think in crypto specifically, we experience bull runs and people get confused thinking that they're a profitable trader when in reality they were just someone who happened to be long in an asset class in a bull run.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for elaborating on that. So going back to your journey, you kind of alluded to how you got started and sort of like where you were getting your information from. How did that look like for you, like in terms of getting information? Were you on Twitter, YouTube, like, and were you doing this alongside other people, or were you just doing it alone to start off?
I mean, I'm old. So, like, when I first got into the trading scene, like, I was on forums and like blogs. It's there's like a website called Baby Pips that I was on, and there's other trading forums that I was on. Reddit had a ton of
Hmm.
stuff. YouTube was like around, but it was like much more early days of YouTube. So it's not like now where there is like 10,000 copycat trading accounts being like, look at my wrist
Yeah.
watch, look at my Lambo, join my Telegram group for signals. Like that wasn't, there was a few of those kind of furus, but not nearly as many as there are now. So yeah, it was like old school. Like I was in forums, a lot of it was written. And I had a buddy that I had met in university who was interested in this stuff as well. So we kind of shared some ideas, but I got on Twitter very early. Like that was one of the first places I joined right after I kind of got into this. And you kind of find people through it, right? You're reaching out, no different than now. You reach out to people, you're in DMs with people, sharing charts, sharing ideas. But for me, it was definitely a lonely journey early on. I paid for a lot of mentorships. Most of them were bogus, but I paid
Hmm.
for a lot of content, and some of it was good, some of it wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, a lot of people have this question now because there's a lot of garbage on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of people coming in. What would you suggest in terms of like how do you learn and get the best information?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not envious of like new entrants to Twitter these days because it's so noisy. When I first got on Twitter, like the noise to signal ratio was skewed in the complete opposite direction. Like there was a
Right.
lot of alpha on there. Like people were sharing tons of alpha for free. There was like productive, interesting conversations. Like the state of crypto Twitter is the worst I've ever seen it. Now, I'm not saying there's
Yeah.
not great accounts out there. There absolutely are, but it's not what it used to be. And you have to just be that much more diligent in curating a list of people, right? Curate your following to people who are not just moon boys and shillers and shit talkers and haters, because that seems to be the mix these days. Like there are
Yep.
still, you're just gonna have to work harder. I'm not trying to tell you not to do it. I still think Twitter is one of the best resources, because in my opinion, you have to you can you have to kind of know what you're talking about on Twitter. Like there's people who have a ton of followers who don't know shit, but you can kind of tell that very easily. It's
Yeah.
quite obvious when someone's like, okay, this person only longs and they're just bull posting. But you can
Right.
tell when someone knows what they're talking about, if that makes sense. Where it can be a little bit more deceptive, I think, on Instagram or YouTube, because it's very easy to have a lifestyle that looks like you know what you're talking about, but there's not as
Yep.
much substance. It's harder to be substantive in the written form. And so I think Twitter's super important. And then try and curate a small group of friends, get on a Telegram group, get in a Discord together, people who are at your level, and then some people who are where you want to be. And just interact and communicate. I mean, I got started by being a reply guy on accounts that had more followers than me.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And this also brings me to my next question. How has your trading evolved, like technically and mentally speaking? I see a lot of people struggle with like going from one system to another without giving it, like they're just jumping between whatever they see someone else is successful at doing. What did that process look like for you, and how did you end up, sticking to how you trade now?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So, like, I started off, I think, like everyone is, you try and replicate someone who you see having success. So you see someone using an indicator, you try and use that indicator. You see someone trading with the, order flow and a heat map or whatever else they're doing, and you try and replicate that. You're like, oh, this is the golden ticket. This is the holy grail. And it's just, that's what I'm missing. That's why I'm not making money. So I strategy hopped very much early on between a variety of different things, indicators and trend based systems and all sorts of stuff. And then I found price action. And I think what resonated with me immediately was simplicity. Not that it's easy necessarily, but like it was clean and like easy for me at least to understand and how my brain worked. And I just kind of resonated with it immediately. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. I'm not going to go for the new flavor of the week. I see someone making money with some new indicator. And I got on a PA in 2016, 2017, and I just kind of stuck with it. And that was really the key, is sticking with it at the end of the day. Like, I always give this analogy to people, whether you're American or European, think of a sport, what's your dominant hand? If you're playing soccer or football and you kick all of your penalty kicks with your right foot in practice, and then you go into a game and you use your left foot, probably going to have bad results. Trading's no different, right? Like, you need to build up that repetition, that muscle memory in one thing, as opposed to trying to, be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so that was what was key for me, is I found something that resonated with me, and then I stuck with it, and I made, I put the reps in.
Yeah, that was a great analogy, man. And I think it's also very individual in nature. Just because someone's making money just using RSI doesn't mean you necessarily will. I think, in terms of psychology, your lifestyle, how much time you have, and all those things need to be factored into it. But again, at the end of the day, what matters is the repetition, right? And I think it's just logical, though, jumping in the beginning and then finding something that resonates with you and sticking to it. Um,
Yeah, no,
so
I agree. You can't force it. Like, there's many ways to skin the cat. And I think there's this weird thing in trading where people are very, they try and shelter information. They gatekeep it. They go, oh, well, I've got this super secret strategy and I'm not going to share with you. What I love about price action is, like, what I do is relatively simple. And I always tell people this. I was like, I'll show you exactly how I mark up the chart. But your ability to replicate what I do and then manage all of the other stuff outside of the
yep.
TA that's really the make or break point. It's not just being able to mark up the chart and find the levels of interest. It's, are you going to execute when the time comes? Are you going to trust the system? And that's stuff that you can't teach. That's stuff that you just learn by doing.
Yeah, 100%. Um, what I wanted to ask you was, so that same interview that I was talking about earlier, you mentioned, at one point you basically maxed out your lines of credit, drain your savings, use up all your credit cards to buy Bitcoin and ETH. I think this was like in 2013. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was like 2013 or whenever the Bitcoin dropped from, I forget when it was, from 6K to 3K. My question is, what was the thought process leading up to that, and how do you, in general, develop conviction in a trader position?
Yeah, so this was the end of the 2017 bull run. 20 going into 2018.
Okay,
So
right.
Bitcoin peaked at 20K and then it bottomed at 3K. Um, so at this point, I had experienced two bull markets. Like, I caught the tail end of the first one I was a part of, and then the 2016, 17, the one that ended in 2018 at 20K. Like, I was in that. I was on Twitter, I was posting charts, and I made money. I didn't make a lot of money, but I made money, and I kept a lot of the money that I had made on the way down as well. And I was shorting the market. I was one of the few people who didn't think the 6K floor was going to hold. But what I'd realized at this point is, okay, I knew we were in a bear market. We were making lower highs and lower lows, and we were bouncing off this 6K level. And I said, okay, I'm looking at the chart. I'm looking at history. I'm looking what happened in the last bull run. I said, okay, every time the market drops 80 to 90% off the high, it bottoms every time. This was the first bull market, the second bull market. This was now the third one. So I'm like, if this 6K level fails, we're going to go down at, anywhere from 3 to 4K, maybe even a little lower. But that's like an 80% decline off of all-time high. And my thought process was quite simple, is I don't think Bitcoin is going anywhere. We were still in a macro bull run in risk assets at that point in time. And we still are, arguably, obviously. And so I was like, I still think Bitcoin's going to go up again and make a new all-time high in the future. And my theory was simply based on, this is what happened last time. Let's assume that it happens again. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And the thought process in terms of why I was willing to max out all my stuff is I still considered myself very young. And my invalidation was everything goes to zero. That's what made it easy, is like every Bitcoin I bought at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, if I'm wrong, it's zero. Like that's my invalidation, literally zero. So it's a lot harder to buy a bottom when it's like, okay, well, Bitcoin's 50K. How low can it go? Where's that idea wrong? For me, I'm like, this thing's going to zero or it's not. And I'm going to make a bunch of money. And so I wrote an email actually to about 50 people, mostly family, some friends, saying, here's my thesis. This is what happened last time. We go down 80, 85%. I think this is a good value buy. I'm buying Bitcoin and this and that. And I sent that email. Nobody listened to me. And I should dig that email up and post on Twitter because it's quite funny. And I was like, I think we'll go to 40K. And we ended up going to like 70. But yeah, I mean, the conviction was like, I don't think that this is over. I used history as a guide. And I had a very clear invalidation. It's very easy to be confident in something if you know exactly where you're wrong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how do you develop conviction in general? Do you think it just comes through repetition as you gain confidence? Because I think a lot of people have these plans, but then when things actually unravel, basically ends up with inaction. So in terms of how you trade and how you position, how did you develop that conviction after that entire after buying Bitcoin at the lows, like up to now? How do you go about developing conviction in the position?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that you mentioned for sure is repetition. It's having done it before. When you have a system and a process, you have data. And the conviction comes from knowing that what I do over a large enough data set, over a long enough period of time, makes money. So it's easy to be convinced that like, hey, I'm going to keep taking this same trade because I know it's a proven profitable system or strategy. So there's some part of conviction comes from the data, the repetition of it. Another part is a bit intuitive from knowing what it's like to win, knowing what it's like to lose. I think that's part of it as well. I think the most important part for me for building conviction is I focus everything risk first. No different than when I told you buying Bitcoin at 3 to 6K, my mind didn't go, how much money am I going to make if I'm right? My mind was, how much will I lose if I'm wrong? If all of it goes to zero, what am I out? And that's how I treat every single trade. And I try and tell people, I'm like, you need to just focus on the risk. If you're comfortable with how much you're willing to lose, it's way easier to take the trade. If I'm wrong, I lose 10 grand, great. But if you're wrong and you don't know when that trade idea is wrong, or if that trade idea is wrong, you're going to lose more money than you want to. It's very hard to hold a trade and have conviction in that trade. And then for bigger stuff, it's like have strong opinions, but hold them loosely. Like don't like I'm willing to put money behind this idea, behind this trend, whatever it is. But I'm very quick to know when I'm wrong. And to get out and flip bias or just to sit on the sidelines and admit that I'm wrong. And part of that comes from, experience as well, getting smacked in the face, realizing you're not as smart as you probably think you are.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of knowing what it's like to lose, you faced a significant setback when FTX went down. I think at the time you spoke about being at your first big crypto event. Like I think it was a crypto fight night where you were there as a commentator, and meanwhile you can't withdraw your funds, um, and then you have to come home and assess everything, strap up your boots, and take everything head on. How did you manage to come out on the other side of that? Because a lot of people, gave up after a significant setback like that. What do you think prepared you to deal with such a tremendous loss like the way that you did, where you proceeded to make everything back and more?
Yeah, like I think that I'm lucky, but by no means special in that for me, setbacks have always been that. It's a setback. It's not a kill shot. It's like, okay, this is a setback. I need to be motivated to get back to where I was and beyond. I've thought about life in general. I didn't make a team, in school for basketball. Okay, I need to practice more. I need to get better. So next year, when I go to the tryout, I can make the team. That's just been who I am as a person. And I think I'm very lucky in that regard. But I do think it's something that you can be taught as well. I think something that gave me confidence was I knew how to make money. And when you have a skill that is repeatable and portable and you can take it with you, it gives you a really unbelievable amount of confidence that, no matter the situation, shit hits the fan, I'm going to be able to extract money from one market one way or another. So it was very much depressing and frustrating and a major setback. And it was hard to hang out with all my friends. Like I'd prepaid for a Rolex, my first one ever. I was there with the woman who's now my fiance, trying to show her a good time. I was, trying to keep
Right.
up with all my buddies who are, killing it. And yeah, so I mean, it was tough, but I used it as motivation and I knew I had the skill. I think that brings you an unbelievable amount of confidence. You got the skill, you've done it before, it means you can do it again. And I just used it as motivation. And I leaned on my community as well. Like if you go back in my Telegram group or my tweets, like I was, telling people, it's like, I'm going to make it all back and more. Like I'm not going anywhere. And I held myself accountable to that. So I think it's one of the most, fun parts about being a trader is it's like, I feel like I can be dropped anywhere. You give me an account, you give me a little bit of
Yeah.
money, I can earn. I maybe not going to make, $1,000 into tens of millions, but I can make money in the market consistently. And, that gives you confidence. And crypto is so awesome because there's so much opportunity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that mindset is huge. It's an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. What would you say you've struggled the most with when trading, or something that you still struggle with, and how do you remediate that?
Yeah, I think it's got to be cutting losers. I'm much better at it now than I was, but I have countless situations where, you would let a trade drag on longer than it should. Um, you start using hope instead of logic. Well, I am hoping it's going to bounce and then I'll exit on the bounce. And I think that's something that's even more apparent in crypto because you get this
Yeah.
bag bias, oh, I bought
Yep.
this coin and I need it to go back up. I can't exit here. When in reality, you could be saving yourself a ton of money just getting out and saving that capital, reinvesting it elsewhere, whatever you want to do. So that's something that I think is always a battle, crypto specifically, because you never want to admit that the bull runs over. Like you never want to admit that the gravy train is stopped. In Forex or futures, it's a little easy to be, just purely objective. Like my stop loss is here. But when you have a spot bag of some altcoin, right? What if it goes a little higher? What if it bounces back and I sold? So that's something that I'm always looking to improve, and I still struggle with sometimes.
Yeah, I think that mentality is definitely evident in the reflexivity that we see in crypto as well. So there's this book. It's called Best Loser Wins. I don't know if you've ever gotten a chance to read it or come across it, but it's by Tom Hugard. Phenomenal book. It talks about how important it is to be able to accept losses and not have your ego tied to the market. So you've been doing this for a while. What qualities do you think are key for a trader to be successful? And on the other hand, what have you seen in terms of people that fail to become consistently profitable as traders? What characteristics lead up to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it right there in the word. It's consistency. I
Yep.
think you have to be super persistent to make it in trading. There's like a statistic, who knows how accurate it is. I would like to, well, I can tell you based on, breakout, the statistics are relatively accurate. Like 80 to 90% of people lose money in trading. And we see that in our data. Exchanges see that data. It's how it is. 9 out of 10, hedge funds underperform the market. So like this kind of 90% failure rate seems to be, prevalent in trading. And I think the hard part of trading is not the part that people think is hard. People are like, okay, well, look at the way this guy's chart looks. Like it's got all these lines on it and all these indicators and da 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 da. To me, that's not the hard part. I think I could teach someone how to mark up a chart in like a day. Like I could
Yep.
teach you exactly how to take a chart from the monthly right down to like the hourly. This is exactly how I would execute. It's
Right.
the other stuff, the intangibles, it's the mental side of it. It's actually executing the trades and then managing that trade mentally when you're in it, not closing it too early, not, you know, ignoring your stop, all the stuff that only comes from experience. And I think people's lack of persistence, that's what causes them to fail, is they give up. It's like any activity, there's a learning curve. And I feel like the trading learning curve, it's very long and it's arduous, but once you get there, it's almost like a switch has been flipped. And I think a lot of people, they don't fail because trading's hard, they fail because they never get to that point. So you have to be someone who's consistent, who's going to work hard, who's going to show up. I think being a bit data kind of analytic focused, because that's what it is really at the end of the day. This is
Right.
all math. I think that helps a lot as well. And you got to have self-belief. You have to have an unbelievable amount of self-belief. You got to think that you can do it. To your point, you got to have an abundance mindset. Hey, I'm going to make money. Like the amount of times I've won a trade where I go into it saying I'm going to lose money is probably not that many, right? It's like anything. Like you got to believe that your idea is correct for reasons A, B, and C, and have that abundance mindset, and then discipline, because it's a job where you don't have a typical boss. Your boss is the market and the extent, sure, but it's not like you know what you do every day. You have to make those guardrails yourself. If you got a regular job, you show up at this time, lunch is this time, dinner's this time. Here's your targets for the month, your deliverables. Someone's giving you all that information, and you can just kind of show up almost like a zombie some days and kind of wing your way through it. That doesn't exist in trading. You're accountable to yourself. You've got to be process oriented, but you've got to create that process for yourself. And that takes an unbelievable amount of discipline and a certain type of personality. I don't think some people can't do it, but that type of trading you do and your ability to stick through it is really largely up to you. So those are the kind of things I think are necessary to make a good trader. And for things that, make people fail out, I think it's kind of just the inverse of that. Like if you're not disciplined, you're not going to make it. If you don't work hard, you're not going to make it. If you're not willing to fail and you can't accept being wrong, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for elaborating on that. Also, I think the interesting aspect of trading is it's psychological warfare, right? Even you can be disciplined for years, and it just takes like that one trade where you just keep adding to, expecting something to recover, where you could blow up your account. So really, you have to stay on point every time you go into a trade. In one of the interviews you mentioned, and I quote, "Making it to me was having enough that if I wanted to stop, I could, and I'd have enough money to retire, take care of my current and future family." Has that definition changed for you after? I think this was like 2 or 3 years ago. This interview that I read. Has that definition changed for you, or does it remain the same? And what does making it look like for you now?
Yeah, I think it's changed in a few ways. I mean, one, I don't think anyone, like I've made it by so many, metrics, but I think I used to think that there's a number that you're done. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I just need this much. That number, I can tell you, as someone who has been successful in trading and in other avenues of life, it doesn't exist. Like there is no number. Sure, you could hit the lottery on a meme coin and make 20-30 million dollars, but what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You can only sit
Right.
by the beach. And I think part of what makes us good traders is the same personality traits that would make it impossible for us to do nothing. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah.
And so I understand if there's someone who's like they've got a dead end job and they're, they're just clocking in, clocking out, and that's their life, and they win the lottery. Maybe that person can sit on the beach for the next 30 years. I can't. I need to
Yep.
do shit. Whether it's, and it doesn't necessarily have to be stuff that makes money, but I have to keep
Yeah.
my mind occupied. And so to that end, like there's no number that you're going to hit that you're like, okay, I'm done now. I can hang it up. There might be a number you can hit where you say, hey, I'm going to not take the same types of risk that I used to. And that's where I'm at. The type of trading that I do, the things I invest in, the amount of time I spend in the market is not what it was a few years ago while I was still trying to quote unquote make it. Because now I don't need to take as much risk because the capital I'm dealing with is larger. And I can sustain myself in other ways. I have breakout. I have money in more traditional markets that are spitting out kind of consistent cash flow, real estate. There's other things I'm doing that are paying me where I'm no longer saying, hey, I need to trade to make it. So I don't think that make it number exists. I just think that things change, the goalposts move. But you're always going to do something. Like, why is Elon Musk launching rockets into space, advising the president, building electric cars when he's the richest person in the history of the world? You know what I mean? Like it never really ends. So I think that was maybe a
Right.
bit short-sighted. It's kind of that common crypto Twitter trope, right? Like how much
Yeah.
is enough to retire? Well,
Right.
it depends on so many, a litany of different factors. And for me, I think I've made it. But it's like, okay, well, what's the next challenge? And that's what we're focused on now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned that statement about sitting at the beach, and I just tweeted earlier today that I can't not be busy. Like I don't need to be involved in the markets 24/7, but I need to be doing something. Otherwise, it drives me crazy. Like it's almost like a chore to take time off and not do anything for me.
Yeah, I'm learning
Um,
how to golf, and it's like, oh my god, I
yeah,
suck at this. Like, let's go. Like, I need to figure it out now. Like, I need to become good. I need to break 100, and then I need to break 90. I even have trouble playing video games now. I don't know if that's just because I'm getting old, and video games aren't what they used to be. Because there's so many good games everyone's playing, and I have trouble getting into them because I feel like I'm wasting time, and I want to. Like, I want to play. But I
yeah,
don't have the same ability that I used to be like, I'm going to sit here for 8 hours and just play this thing. I don't know.
yeah. I can't do that, man. I can't. I really can't. It's definitely a task for me as well. To pivot a little bit, I wanted to get your thoughts on the market. So what I wanted to ask you was, what are your general thoughts on the past 2 years and how similar or different the crypto market specifically has been compared to the past, and any ideas on why this is the case, as well as the implications on the future in the space?
Yeah, I don't think things are necessarily different. I know we have like tons of people being like, when alt season and this bull run
Right.
sucks. And
Yeah.
it's like, dude, Bitcoin went from like 15,000 to 110.
Yeah.
Like if
Exactly.
that was the top, that's an unbelievable return. And every
Yep.
single cycle we've seen diminishing returns on Bitcoin. Last cycle it did a 20x, a cycle before it did a, 50x. That's just the nature of the game. This asset is becoming bigger and more expensive. So it is going to see diminishing returns. It takes too much money to pump it. Like we're not going to see Bitcoin do 100x from the bottom ever again. It's just not going to happen. And that's okay. But I think by any reasonable metric, I don't know how you couldn't call this bull run one of the greatest ever. Bitcoin itself did a 7x. We had dozens of altcoins, if not hundreds, go to multi-$100 million market caps, some into the billions. We have ETFs for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, ETFs being, proposed for altcoins. We have a strategic reserve by the United States government. We have companies buying Bitcoin. We have countries like El Salvador buying Bitcoin. Like, I don't know how someone could look at this and say this bull run was shitty, other than the fact that their coins didn't go up. And
Yep.
that's what it always is it's like, well, we didn't have an alt season. It's like, well, maybe the alt season occurred. It just didn't happen for the coins that you held. And so, I mean, I hope that it's not over. But even if it is, I don't think that this was a terrible bull market by any means. I mean, we appreciated massively. Crypto's on a global level that it's never been at ever before. So I just think it's bigger. That's what happens every cycle, right? Is it just gets bigger and bigger. Last cycle, it was Elon talking about Dogecoin on SNL. Now it's Elon's in the freaking White House and they're signing a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So I do think that there's a chance that things aren't over. But if it is over for this cycle, the most interesting thing for me will be now that we have all of these institutional players on board, we have what should be conceivably strong hands within companies, countries where they maybe aren't going to be selling crypto. Does that change how crypto moves? Do we see 80% drawdowns on Bitcoin ever again? I don't know. We've clearly seen it on alts. That hasn't changed. But the longer I'm in this game, the more interested in I'm just being a BTC maxi. Just hold.
Yeah, no,
Don't
absolutely.
really want to hold anything else.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. And this is a speculative conversation, but what are your general thoughts on the market, short term, like the next few weeks, and longer, like a little bit longer term, like the rest of the year? Are there any assets you have your eyes on currently, and what are your thoughts on the market?
So I'm in a pretty heavy cash position. I think if Bitcoin can reclaim the monthly open, and this is the month of March. I don't know when this will be released, but there's a chance that we could see some relief along with equities getting a little bit of relief, maybe back up into the 90s, even to 100K. But I'm pretty confident that whether it's very soon or in a few weeks, we're going to retest that previous all-time high level. Whether we bounce right at it or we slice through it and dig into the 60s, it just seems like a very clear and obvious level on the highest time frames for us to retest, and then we'll determine from there whether or not the bull run is over or not, because that's going to cause a reaction regardless. It's just whether that reaction is a lower high, or we're going to trade back up to new highs. And then I think the most important thing to pay attention to right now, because we're now part of this macro economic gumbo of risk assets, like we're no longer this, coin that's going to have these, bull markets and bear markets in a vacuum. We're very much tied, I think, to the general risk on, risk off nature of the economy as a whole. And right now we're in a period of quantitative tightening. Interest rates are really high. Inflation is high. And I think the next biggest catalyst for crypto and risk in general is all of that stuff coming down, rates coming down, getting cut. We have FOMC tomorrow, I believe, on the 18th. Yep. I don't think we're going to see rate cuts tomorrow, but maybe in May's meeting or June's meeting. And that could potentially be what we need to set us up for an end of year rally if we're going to get one.
Yeah, 100%. I'm generally aligned with what you just said. An interesting conversation, and I think Ryan, the Flow Horse on Twitter, mentioned this as well, is it seems like Bitcoin has basically set itself apart as an asset class compared to the rest of the space. Do you agree with that? And also, there's this conversation that I've seen on Twitter, which comes around every so often, about this being the last cycle in crypto where you can make it big. And I suspect it's related to the trenches, right? What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that on-chain degeneracy continues, and also in terms of Bitcoin being its own asset class at this point?
I think Bitcoin's always been its own asset class. Like if you look at any other coin that's ever existed, they basically all trend to zero versus Bitcoin over a long enough time frame. Everyone thought Solana was the next thing. Look at the Solana BTC chart right now. I don't think that ever makes a new all-time high. Doesn't mean Sol can't make an all-time high versus USD, but versus Bitcoin, I think that top might be in forever, similar to Ethereum's. So I think that's always been the case. Like Bitcoin is the standard. And not XRP, it's Bitcoin. And everything is going to have periods of outperformance, and there'll be rotations into other stuff. But at the end of the day, countries are not buying up, your shit coin. They're buying Bitcoin. And Bitcoin's the one that's scarce. So I think that's always been the case. It's just more obvious now than ever. Like if you are just fully in Bitcoin, you're like, Bitcoin's at 83K. Like, yeah, it was over 100. but it's at 83. Like, you're still not hurting that bad. Where if you're in one of the, millions of altcoins that got launched over the last year, you could be down 99.9% at this point. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's always been the case. And as for the last time to make it, that's what they say every cycle. That was your chance. You're never going to
Yep.
be able to make it again. The only veracity I give to that is that maybe AI is coming to eat your lunch. And if you don't have a bit of money by now, a lot of entry level jobs might get taken over by AI, but that's a completely doomer take in another direction. But there's always going to be a casino. There's a reason
Right.
people go and gamble at the casino. They sports bet. There's penny stocks. There's slot machines. Degeneracy is never going to die. Betting on the crypto casino to end is betting on humans to, stop being degenerate and greedy. And I just don't think that that's a good bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, human nature never changes. It's the beginning of time, right? So can't bet against that. Are there any narratives that you're keeping your eye on in crypto? Also, a more specific question in terms of perps dexes. Have you or do you use them, and what do you think is holding them back, or do you have any specific thoughts on that sector going into the future?
Narrative wise, like I would like to think that there's still some sort of room for, like, and I hate saying it, but like utility altcoins, right? Like, you would like to think that some altcoins are going to come out or already exist that like do have some purpose. Like, I do think DeFi was really cool. Like, there was
Right.
a lot of issues with DeFi, like there was exploits and hacks and
Hmm.
rugs and things like that. But like, there was something, like, it was cool. Decentralized finance, right? Like, it's cool. There's like a use case here, and there's a purpose for some of these tokens. You can collect yield and you can lend and you can do all this stuff. So I would love for, if we continue this bull run and we are going to go back up, or maybe it's the next one, that there's more of a focus back on to utility. At least like the coins pretended to do something, even if they didn't. You know what I mean? Like, they used to at least pretend. Whereas like this recent cycle, it's just like, it's just meme coins. Like,
Oh
I
man,
guess
yeah, that
the
was cancerous,
advantage,
honestly.
yeah, like the advantage is at least going into it, it does nothing. But it just is a game of like the greater fool. Like, who is going to be the one to buy this coin at the top, and who can I sell
Yeah.
it to who thinks it's worth slightly more than I think it's worth? And I just didn't like it as much. And maybe that's because I'm a boomer and I fumbled a bunch on meme coins. But I've always been of the mindset that altcoins in general are a tool to get more Bitcoin. But I would like to see a renaissance in at least projects that try and do something, whether or not they accomplish it. Like, if we're going to call ourselves Web3 in this revolutionary new technology form, we got to get away from the stuff that is just purely like, these are just pure pump and dumps. Like, those are always going to be there. But yeah, so that would be the narrative, I guess, that I'm, kind of watching. I forget the second question. Sorry.
No, no worries. The second question was basically specifically with respect to perps dexes. Have you used them, and what are your thoughts on them? Also, what do you think is holding them back, and where do you see that sector going in the future, if you have any thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, I think perp dexes have a huge advantage in that you are the custodian of your own funds. Like, as someone who's lost money on FTX and stuff like that, like, having the custody of your funds is huge. So I think to me, that's the biggest advantage of a perp dex, is you get the upside of, trading on a centralized like exchange, but you don't have to deposit your funds somewhere and trust that they're not going to screw you over, right? Not your keys, not your coins. I think the things that are holding it back are a few things. A lot of these new perp decks, like, you look at like something like Hyperliquid, which has been massively successful. The
Yep.
UI is great, but it's a matter of, is the liquidity going to be as good? Is the execution going to be as good? And are the fees going to be as good? I think that's going to be the kind of final things that perp dexes need to, master to fully pull market share away from centralized exchanges in general. But there's a lot of cool stuff that perp dexes can do as well. That, there's maybe jurisdictional issues with certain
Yep.
centralized exchanges, things like that. But I think it's going to be a huge thing to watch going forward. I think we're in the era. Hyperliquid's been huge for this. of perp dexes now, and I think everyone should be using them. I think centralized exchanges can be great, specifically if you're trying to trade some more long tail stuff where you're just not going to get the liquidity on a perp dex. But if you're trading like I trade primarily Bitcoin, Ethereum, Sol. That's basically it. And you can do that on the majority of the large perp dexes with zero issue. If you are on Binance, sure, you can trade some obscure altcoin. It's going to have better liquidity than a perp dex might. But I think perp dexes now versus where they are last cycle, they're way more competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for elaborating on that. Let's pivot a little bit. I posted something on Twitter to see if, I usually ask audience questions, but before I get to that, there's two questions that I've been asking everyone recently. The first one being, what advice would you give to someone who has a small portfolio? And small is obviously relative, but someone listening in who wants some advice. Hey, like I have this much and I'm trying to run this up. At this point in the cycle where we are currently, what would you suggest?
So it's a very, very tricky question. I get this one on my streams all the time as well. Like,
Yep.
they're like, how I've got a 4-figure port. Like, what do I do?
Right.
How do I turn this in? The the thing about crypto specifically is like the size of your port. First thing you got to determine is, what are you? Are you a trader? Are you a gambler? Or are you an investor? Because as much as I believe investors and traders, there's a lot of similarities. Like an investment is still a trade. Um, if you're a trader and you're like, I'm doing this trading thing properly, I'm risking 1 to 3% a trade. It's like, okay, well, on $1,000, it's going to take you a really long time to grow that account. So my best bet is keep at it, get a job, find ways to get more money. So as you improve your trading, you can increase your capital base, because you're going to be able to grow that balance faster by just having a job than you are by trading properly. Because when you start out, if you start with a small balance, it takes a while to get that balance to a meaningful amount. It is like a snowball. There is a bit of a momentum effect where once you are, in the 5-figure, 6-figure, you're trading with a larger sum. The amount of money you're making is more meaningful. But if you're like, hey, I'm systematically taking these trades and I'm not gambling, I'm not full porting every trade, it's going to take you forever to grow your account. That's just how it is. So the fastest way to grow that balance is by supplementing it with a job, in my opinion. Or use a prop firm like Breakout, because you can trade a larger account balance with a lot less money. Now, if you're trying to gamble, right, you're like, hey, you're trying to hit a lottery, right? You're trying to hit a lick on a meme coin or whatever it is, where you can put in $1,000 and turn it into 100,000. I think the issue most people have is survivorship bias. They see these guys who make all this money on meme coins, not realizing that 99% of people all lost all the money they put in on that meme coin. It's very few are hitting that insane return. So I would find ways to get money to grow your capital. That's going to be the best way early on when you're starting with a very low port, and your asset selection is going to be different than me. There's no point, in my opinion, in putting $1,000 into Bitcoin hoping to 10x your money. It's probably never going to happen. It might in 10 years, who knows? But at this point, the cost basis for Bitcoin is too high. So you're going to have to look further down the risk curve and potentially invest in cheaper stuff that might offer more upside. But inherently, there's also more risk with those kinds of coins. Like, it's easier for a coin to go from 1 to 2 cents than it is from $1,000 to $2,000. But to that end, that coin can go from a penny to half a penny a lot quicker as well. So stick with it. Keep your job. Don't quit your job. Like, your job is your way to supplement your trading. I think that's something people always forget. They get a little bit of money. They're like, I'm just going to trade full time. It's like, why not trade and then also work your job? And if you have extra money, now you have more money to trade with. You know what I mean? So find ways to make money. And whether it's a job, whether it's working in a Discord group as a mod, whatever it is, find ways to make more money and continue to supplement that account. And if you're trying to turn a little into a lot, realize you're probably playing the lottery, and there's a lot of risk in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. The second question is, hypothetically speaking, and we're not offering any financial advice here, this is for entertainment purposes only. But if you were talking to a version of yourself right now, where your entire port is in meme coins and alts, and your port is down 80% right now, what would you do and what would you tell yourself?
you have to have a very frank conversation with yourself about whether or not that money can be better allocated elsewhere, whether that be just sitting in cash, or allocated to other coins elsewhere. It's very hard to sell something at a loss. I completely get it. I completely understand. It's really hard. It's really frustrating. But um, you need to free yourself of the idea of like getting out at break even or getting out above water, because these coins that go down 80 or 90%, they can go down another 80 or 90% from here on another 10% nuke in Bitcoin. So that money might be better allocated elsewhere. And then you also have to realize you can always buy back. So if you're like, hey, all my money's tied up in meme coins, I need these things to bounce. Like, that's not a very good strategy. You're basically just trying to guess where the bottom's going to be and hope that you're going to, sell on the next bounce. Well, what happens if it bounces and your coin goes up 100%? You go, well, that was the bottom and I'm now not going to sell. And it just ended up being a lower high. So, I'm not saying to cut your bag because the bottom might be in, who knows? But take stock of where you're at, how much money you have. Could that money be better used elsewhere? Are you prepared to lose potentially more of that investment, and realize you can always buy back? Like, if you sell something and then the market bottoms, buy back. It's not like you have to never participate in that asset again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some of my DMs that I've gotten, it's actually surprising. I've been getting asked for money and advice when it comes to, hey, I'm down 80%, all this stuff. And it's kind of remarkable seeing, like, during an uptrend, $1,000 is not much, right? No one thinks. I mean, it's relative. I'm gonna say it's relative, but it's just surprising to see that, in the other direction, each dollar counts a lot more. When the market is in a different phase. So yeah, it's like you said. I think that's great advice. Let's go to some audience questions. Let's see what we have here from Twitter. If there's anything worth asking. Has he always had a jack neck, or did he just train the fuck out of it? This is from Sassy XBT.
You know what? I used to be so skinny, and I had no neck at all. Like, I was just a skinny little rail. I'm like 6'2", so like 187 centimeters or whatever. And I used to weigh like 150 pounds, like even at this height.
Damn.
And then I really got into the gym, and I don't think I did anything specifically for my neck, but I did kind of like the big four lifts, right?
Okay.
Deadlift,
Yeah.
overhead press, bench press, and squat. And I think the
Yep.
combination of getting a really heavy deadlift and a relatively heavy overhead press helped my neck, I guess. But yeah, yeah, it can be
All right.
trained. I think there's maybe a little bit of genetics there, but
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What's his go-to way to unwind after a wild day, red or green in the markets?
My go-to what?
Your go-to way to unwind.
Weight on wine.
Yeah. I guess they're just saying, hey, like when you're up a lot or down a lot, like, what do you do
What do
to
I
kind
drink?
of compensate for the emotion? Yeah, whatever. If you drink or whatever you do.
So I'm not a big drinker anymore. I like scotch. So if I feel like having a glass of scotch, I'll have a cheeky glass of scotch as a way to celebrate. That would probably be my go-to. Or like if it's like really, sometimes you just crave like a crispy beer. But the older you get, the more you realize that beer is just straight up poison and just empty calories. But sometimes just a nice crispy beer is a nice way to congratulate myself.
Okay. All right. What's the fastest path to being a profitable trader? I guess we've basically covered that already. I'm trying to find any other questions. For Mayne, did you trade ICT concepts on lower time frames before moving up to your 12-hour to 1-hour system? Or were you always more focused on higher time frame swing trades primarily? And any tips on learning ICT properly? You are one of the best teachers, by the way. Appreciate what you do. And this is by Casio, followed by a bunch of numbers.
Yeah, so I definitely started scalping early on. I was under the impression that if you take more trades, you'll make more money. Like, I think that so many um, people have that same kind of thought process. Is like, okay, like I'm going to trade the low time frame. I'm going to take 10 trades a day, and I'm going to make way more money. So I did start off early. early on the lower time frames. It was a little later that I kind of got into the swing trading because I was working, and I realized that I much preferred being able to take a trade and not having to like stare at it, not having to be like locked in at the New York Open. I also live on the West Coast, so New York Open's like 6 in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. So those were some of the things. And then also my personality type. I just wasn't someone who enjoyed the fast pace like of scalping where it's like I have this much time to make a decision and I have to take a trade exactly within this window and I'm going to sit here and watch it the entire time. It just wasn't in line with my personality. And I think he brought up ICT. Something ICT taught was like you got to figure out what kind of athlete you are, right? Are you a sprinter? Are you a marathon runner, right? Are you doing the 800 meter, the 1600 meter? Are you the 100 meter? Everyone's different. And so, depending on your circumstances, your work life balance, just your personality type, swing trading, day trading, positional trading, it might work for you. Some might be better for you, some might be worse for you. And I just kind of resonated more with kind of medium to long term trades.
All right. Okay, perfect. I think that pretty much wraps up all the questions. There was a funny comment where someone said, "My wife saw the photo of Maine and asked who that." I said, "That's a top trader, baby." And she said, "Turn off computer immediately."
Good
So,
advice. Listen to your wife.
all right. So, before we wrap it up, I usually like to ask like some lifestyle questions. What does a typical day look like for you, and what's your current routine looking like?
Yeah. So, definitely a lot different than it used to be because I'm running breakout now. Every morning I wake up and I'm on team calls. I have calls with my marketing team, my customer service team, the management team. Those are basically every day in the morning, every week. My routine has definitely changed because I'm now managing people, I'm managing a business. But when I was purely trading, I would wake up and the first thing I would do is chill because I generally early on in my career was trading like the London session. So I actually was staying up at night to trade and I slept through New York. But yeah, I like to wake up, drink a bunch of water, get work done. I like to go to the gym in the middle of the day before it's too busy. That's super key for me. I try to not drink coffee for the first, hour to 1.5 hours of the day. Try and wake up, see a little bit of sun, take the dog for a little bit of walk, get the blood flowing. And then I like to just bang out my work. I like to try and get stuff done relatively early in the day. I think one of the biggest advantages of trading is you don't need to put in like an 8 hour day. You can kind of find
Yep.
what session you want to trade or what time of day you want to trade and get your concentrated work done during then and then enjoy the freedom. I mean, the biggest reason to take this massive risk every day, in my opinion, is to have freedom. So, but yeah, typical day is wake up, try and drink a bunch of water, be healthy, get some work done, go to the gym.
Awesome. And when it comes to your health and fitness, like what do you do weight training, compound movements? What's your split looking like?
Yeah, so right now I'm on like an A B split. So I have an A day,
Okay.
which is upper body, and then I have a B day, which is lower body, and I'm just alternating every other day basically. And That's been working for me pretty well. It always depends on what I'm trying to do
Yeah.
physically with my body, but once I hit like 30, early 30s, 31, 32, 34 now. I stopped doing the super heavy lifting. Like I got
Yeah.
super into deadlifting,
Yep.
squatting, bench press. I was like deadlifting 450 pounds. I was, squatting over 3 plates and it was awesome. But it's like it gets to a point where like one, who are you trying to impress other than just like other dudes in the gym? Like
Yeah,
chicks don't care, right? And then two, it's like the risk reward
for sure.
drastically is just decreases. You can get um, just as much, if not better, results by doing extremely good form with less weight. So that's one of the biggest changes in my kind of fitness routine. And then trying to get the hardest thing for me is 10,000 steps a day. That is harder than anything I do. I have no problem going to the gym. I have no problem going to the gym when I'm tired. I don't want to go. I'll go. But 10,000 steps a day is hard to do. And it's super important for guys like us who are sitting at a desk all the time.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I was lifting really heavy for a period of time, and then it's like, what's the risk and reward here in terms of like being prone to injuries and stuff? And then it's like, just
You
went
don't
back to
bounce back
hypertrophy.
when you're older, man. You do not bounce back like you used to.
Yeah, yeah. Are any plans moving forward, or are there any big changes on the horizon for you?
Well, getting married, and then hopefully starting a family. I think those are probably the two next major life events for me, which is quite crazy to say. I think sometimes it's very easy on crypto Twitter and social media and stuff to get caught up in,
Yep.
these guys are all living in Dubai and they're doing the boats and they're on the yachts and the crazy watches and the crazy cars. And it's fun. I've done all of that. I've got the nice watches. I've, had sports cars and gone boating and clubbing and all. It's fun. I'm not saying to not do that. But the older I get, the more I just value free time to spend with my fiance, my friends, my family. And that's all I really care about these days.
Awesome. And to wrap up, what advice do you have for people listening in? Could be life or trading or otherwise, whatever you can think of off the top.
Take the bull by the horns, man. As someone who I consider myself an older person on crypto Twitter, because it seems like every other person out there is like a 20-year-old who's got $1 million on a Phantom wallet. Um, I, and I'm almost envious of those people in a way because I spent my early 20s drinking, like, and partying. Like, that's all I cared about. I was in university, sure, I got a degree and I was working a job. But like all I really cared about was like drinking and partying and having a good time. And it wasn't until my mid to late 20s that I even became somewhat aware. Like it's like my frontal lobe finished developing. And it's like, oh, like life is long and I need money and I want to be
Yeah.
healthy and successful and all this stuff. So there's no better time than right now to start taking control of your life because it will pass you by, man. Time just starts to go faster and faster the older you get. It's never too late to start. It's never too early to start. I'm not saying you can't have fun. I think you absolutely should have fun and travel and have experiences. But the sooner you start becoming accountable for your own life, I think the better. We live in a society full of victims, people who want to blame other people, situations, the society in general for their problems. Crypto Twitter is full of these types of people. It's not my fault. It's Hayden Davis, rugged Libra. Sure, you still bought it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
still bought it. At the end of the day, no one's at your house forcing you to buy something. Yes, it was rugged and someone screwed you over, but it's still your fault. You bought it. And I think this permeates a lot of people's life, this mentality of
Hmm.
nothing's my fault. It's always someone else's fault.
Right.
And once you start to realize that everything in your life is your fault, good and bad, and you start to operate that way, I think you can have a way better life. And it's not about like, you have to become some multimillionaire, but just like being accountable to yourself and realizing that you get to determine, are you going to have a good day or a bad day, a good life or a bad life? And the sooner you start to live like that, I think the better.
Yeah, beautiful advice, man. Do you have any Twitter account recommendations or any people that you would nominate for an episode of Perpetual Perspectives? I'm always looking for guests.
That's a good question.
You can get back to me on that if no names come. There's nothing that you like. You can just get back to me on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna think on that one because I think this is a good um, format, and there's a lot of good people. Like, there's a lot of like unbelievably smart people on
Yeah,
crypto
absolutely.
Twitter, and a lot of them are not like huge accounts either.
Yeah,
There's a lot of accounts that are like not very big, but are like cooking. So I don't know.
right.
Maybe get Kanye on here, see what the hell he's been doing.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'll get back to you
for
on that
sure.
for sure.
All right, sounds good. Is there anything that you'd like to plug?
If you want to learn more about me, check out my YouTube channel. I stream minimum of 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. I've been doing that since 2018. I've got like over 700 YouTube videos at this point. So if you're interested in learning more about how I trade, my thoughts on the market, YouTube's a great way to learn. If you want to go even deeper than that, I do have a community I'm part of called The Haven, along with Cold Blooded Chiller and Loma and UB and a few other guys. And then, yeah, we talked a lot about, trading with less money, how do you do this as a career, things like that, look into prop firms. I don't even care if you use my prop firm. You should, because we're the best one for crypto specifically. But prop firms are a fantastic tool to leverage your capital because you get access to more capital. Highly suggest you look into those. It's a great way to scale up your trading, and the downside is a lot more limited than bag holding some meme coin or putting $10,000 in a leverage account and getting liquidated. So look into prop firms. I do think that what we've built is something really cool, and it gives people an opportunity to expedite their journey a little bit by getting a larger capital base to trade with.
Awesome. Mayne, once again, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. In closing, I like to read a quote by your fellow Canadian, Jordan Peterson. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not to who someone else is today. That's a game you can win. The possibility that you can make yourself slightly better on a continual basis is something that is accessible to everyone. So on that note, to everyone listening in, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Stay tuned. I'm going to be bringing on some more exciting episodes in the near future. Until next time. Thanks again, Mayne.
Thank you.